3 armored trucks are rolling side by side, and one of them is hauling $35 million in cold, hard gold. How do you pull off a heist in broad daylight right under the owner's nose? Rewind 1 year to Venice, where John and his crew just snatched $35 million in gold bars. They smeared liquid explosives on the ceiling and positioned it right under the safe. One button, one big bang, and the safe literally drops through the floor and vanishes. The guards chase after Handsome Rob thinking he has got the loot, but they've been played. The real safe is still underwater, and John is under the gun to crack it. Lyle warns them the cops are closing in with less than 7 minutes on the clock. John nails the lock in 3 minutes, and the crew spends the next 4 bagging the gold and prepping the thrusters. By the time the cops arrive, the crew is already slipping away right beneath their feet. Handsome Rob leads the security on a wild goose chase through the canals of Venice. Later, they regroup in the snowy mountains to toast their success. John gives a shout out to Charlie for a plan so perfect they didn't have to fire a single shot. While everyone is dreaming about how to blow their millions, Steve is suspiciously quiet. John announces he is officially hanging up his hat for good. Just as they about to part ways, 2 cars show up in the middle of nowhere. Steve flips the script and brings in hired guns to corner the team.
There's nowhere you can go we won't find you, Steve, you know that.
I think that's probably right, John.
To stay alive, Handsome Rob drives the van straight into the river. Steve doesn't leave until he sees John's body float to the surface, but the survivors stay alive underwater by sharing the car's oxygen tanks. Back on shore, Charlie holds John's body and swears he is going to get even. 1 year later, Charlie finally tracks down the traitor Steve. Steve has stashed the gold in a high-tech safe that is supposed to be unhackable. Charlie recruits John's daughter, Stella, a pro safe cracker who can hit a bank vault in 10 seconds flat. The squad is stacked, Left Ear on explosives, Lyle the genius hacker, and Handsome Rob as the getaway driver. They stake out Steve's mansion and realize it is a fortress with high-tech security and attack dogs. Steve is spotted looking tense as he lugs a heavy suitcase into his car. Seeing his old enemy makes Charlie's blood boil. Under the cover of night, Steve heads to a shady jewelry deal to wash his dirty gold. To infiltrate the fortress, Lyle and Rob track down a cable tech named Peach. Rob uses his charm to win her over and clones the keys to her service van. Stella suits up in a uniform and takes the van for a spin. Left Ear cuts the internet lines to Steve's house, forcing them to call for a tech. Charlie intercepts the call and tells them a repair crew is on the way. Stella rolls up to the gate, flashes her ID, and she is in. But as soon as she parks, the attack dogs go wild until Steve steps in. Steve takes one look at Stella, and he is clearly hooked. While Steve is busy showing off his mansion, Stella sneaks a peek at the office. She finds the safe exactly where they expected it to be. Steve gets suspicious and shuts the door, but it is too late. Stella plays it cool, maps the room with a hidden camera, and tells the team to flip the switch. Once the internet is back up, everything looks totally normal to Steve. Just as Stella is leaving, Steve actually has the nerve to ask her out to dinner. Looking at the man who killed her father, she wants him dead, but she keeps her cool for the sake of the mission. Back at HQ, Lyle creates a 3D model of the mansion. The safe is too far from the entrance and weighs nearly a ton, making it a nightmare to move. Lyle figures out the hallways are exactly 6 feet wide, perfect for a Mini Cooper. They load the cars with metal plates to simulate the gold's weight for Stella's practice runs. The stock suspension can handle the load, so Rob finds a pro to mod 3 Mini Coopers. These custom minis are built different, insane horsepower and tough enough to take a hit. A week later, Steve is back at the gold dealer's shop. The owner accidentally mentions the famous Venice heist, and Steve decides he can leave any witnesses. Just as he is about to leave with the loot, a car pulls up. Steve wipes his prints and slips out the back door just in time. The newcomer is the owner's cousin, a high-ranking mob boss. Finding his cousin dead, the mob boss uses his street contacts to put a target on Steve Ack. Meanwhile, the revenge squad is locked and loaded. Steve is out on a candlelit date with Stella, and the crew prepares to move in, but the neighbor is throwing a massive party, and a loud explosion would draw too many eyes. The plan is scratched, but during dinner,
I trust everyone. It's a devil inside them I don't trust.
Stella lets something slip that puts Steve on edge. She realizes she messed up and tries to play it off as a joke. Steve says she sounds exactly like someone he used to know who had a daughter her age. Just as things get dangerous, Stella accidentally knocks over a wine bottle to signal the team. The crew walks in, and Steve looks like he has seen a ghost. Charlie looks him in the eye and tells him they're retaking the gold right in front of him. Steve doesn't panic because he thinks he is ahead of the game, and the ultimate battle of the thieves begins. Lyle intercepts a tip that Steve is planning to move the gold and run. Charlie decides to hit the convoy while it is in transit. Rob worries there are too many routes to cover, but Charlie has it under control. Lyle hacks the a traffic grid to shut down every street except the one they want. Left ear rigs the designated route with explosives from underneath the street. At 4 p.m. rush hour, 3 armored trucks roll out with Steve watching from a chopper. Lyle checks the tire pressure to ID truck number 128, the one carrying the gold. He manipulates the lights to funnel the truck exactly where they want it.
1.
The armored truck enters the trap and disappears in the tunnel. The crew moves in. Rob takes out the driver while Charlie and Stella hit the safe. 5 minutes later, the safe is cracked and the gold is ours. Even though Steve spent some of it, there is still $27 million left in the pile. They load the custom minis and hit every green light Lyle gives them to make a clean getaway, but they don't realize Steve is hot on their heels. He tracks them to the train station and bribes a worker to open the gates, but instead of his gold, he finds Charlie waiting for him. Steve loses it and pulls a gun, but Charlie doesn't even blink. Steve asks who these people are, and the mob boss steps out to introduce himself. Steve tries to negotiate a deal to split the gold, thinking he can buy his way out. But Charlie already made a deal with the mob, and Steve is about to go through literal hell.